President Bola Tinubu to meet with organized labor on Thursday to resolve the impasse over wages. Workers demand for 250,000 naira for the least paid worker. And former Governor Kano State and National Chairman of the All Progressives Congress, as well as his wife and others, have faced charges of allegations of bribery and misappropriation of funds. Hello and welcome to Politics Today, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Let's begin straight to it and tell you exactly what we are tracking in the polity in the nation. We can tell you that the Community Court of Justice of ECOWAS has ruled that the Federal Republic of Nigeria violated human rights of Obianuju Ude and two others during the End SARS protest. The court found Nigeria in breach of Articles 1, 4, 6, 9, 10, and 11 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, specifically on the right to life, security of person, freedom of expression, assembly and association, prohibition of torture, the duty of the state to investigate, and the right to effectively remedy. The applicants, Obianuju Ude, Perpetual Kamsi, and Daborolua Adeyinka, allege that these violations occurred during the peaceful protest at the Lekki toll gates in Lagos on October the 20th and the 21st, 2020. The Judge Rapporteur Justice Koroma Sengo, who delivered the judgment, also dismissed the allegation that the right to life as guaranteed under Article 4 of the ACPHR is violated. However, said that the federal government must pay each applicant 2 million naira as compensation for violation of their security of person, prohibition of torture and cruel and inhumane and degrading treatment, rights to freedom of expression, assembly and association, duty to investigate human rights violation, and the right to effectively remedy. So that is the latest that is coming from the ECOWAS court as far as the End SARS protest is concerned. Let's move on now and tell you that the President, Bola Tinubu, will meet with organized labor in Abuja tomorrow to further discuss on the new minimum wage for Nigerian workers as that has been an issue. The President is said to have invited the leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress to the meeting, expected to be held at the Aso Villa in the nation's capital. The President is expected to make a decision on the 62,000 naira proposal of the government and the private sector side on one hand, as well as the 250,000 naira demand of the organized labor. The Thursday meeting is coming about a month after the President said in his Democracy Day speech on June the 12th, 2024, that an executive bill on the new minimum wage for workers will soon be sent to the National Assembly for passage. From that, we can tell you also that the National Chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Mr. Abdullahi Ganduje, his wife Hafsat, and 6 others are set to appear in court by 10 a.m. tomorrow to face charges related to alleged bribery, diversion, and misappropriation of funds amounting to billions of naira. Now, this follows a notice of trial served on the respondent through substituted means by order of the Kano State High Court on June the 5th. The order allowed the state to serve the 7 respondents through substituted service, which was subsequently executed via advertisement on 2 national dailies. So those are some of the stories we're tracking for you, but that is not all the stories we're tracking. Just remember today we're going to have a couple of conversations. Some bill in the National Assembly, especially the House of Reps, that has to do with women and how to mainstream women in the House, as well as the issue of fuel subsidy. More on the livestock and all of that. That will be part of our conversation today on the program. So just sit tight as we bring you our political roundup stories.
President Bola Tinubu has sworn in 8 federal permanent secretaries recently appointed to fill existing and impending vacant state and regional spaces. The president performed the swearing-in ceremony just before the commencement of the Federal Executive Council meeting at the Presidential Villa. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, says the National Judicial Council has activated the process of making errant judges who give misleading and conflicting judgments to face the consequences of their despicable and odious conduct. The CJN described their conduct as an embarrassment to the judiciary. He was speaking at the inauguration of 22 justices for the Court of Appeal in Abuja. Justice Ariwola urged the new justices to be upright and not falter and told the path of infamy, but must adjudicate according to the Constitution.
As judicial officers, we have to continually remind ourselves the fact that we are not occupying our respective positions to serve ourselves, but the Nigerian masses, and the best way we can serve them is by doing what will make them feel safe in our hands, and also trust us to always deliver the right judgments that will not be tainted by sentiments, emotions, or other clandestine considerations.
The governor of Ondo State, Lucky Ayedatiwa, have presented 25 brand new operational vehicles to security agencies in the state. While presenting the vehicles at the governor's office in Akure, he stressed the relevance of the operation of security agencies in the state, noting that his administration will continue supporting them in performing their duties effectively.
We recognize the importance of equipping our security agencies with the needed materials to combat crime and maintain law and order in our state, while assuring you that this kind of intervention shall continue subject to availability of funds.
In the South-South, the Rivers State Governor, Siminalayi Fubara, says his administration has begun preparing the 2025 budget and it will soon be presented. Speaking while addressing the delegation from Iche and Omuma local government areas who paid him a solidarity visit at the government house in Port Harcourt, Governor Fubara explained that the process is ongoing, despite calls by the Martin Amaiwule-led assembly that he should resubmit the current budget proposal.
We are not doing any budget to nullify that decision. It is what to send them to their villages. For me, as I'm talking to you, I have started preparing my budget for 2025, which I'm going to present very soon.
Members of the Iowa Youths for Peaceful Coexistence have cautioned against politically sponsored protests against the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike. Speaking at a news conference in Abuja, the group alleges that some of the recent protests against the FCT minister are sponsored to smear his reputation and urged well-meaning Nigerians to support the minister in his mission to develop the seat of power.
We have a minister with an open hands, with an open door policy. Wike is willing and ready to welcome any idea from every quarters. So it is wrong for some people to discourage the hard work of the minister.
Welcome back. And of course, it's now time to start that very conversation we've been talking about. Let me bring you up to speed with this particular one. Remember, we are still having the issue of fear scarcity, but that's on the other part of the program. But yesterday, a constitution amendment bill to improve women representation in parliament through the introduction of what they call special seat scale second reading. The House was divided on that over this particular bill. Remember that there were issues as well in the other assemblies where 5 gender bills were rejected. They include the bill for special seats for women at the National Assembly, bills seeking affirmative action for women in political administration, bill to grant citizenship to foreign-born husbands of Nigerian women, just like they do for the men as well, bill to allocate 35% political positions based on appointment to women and creation of additional seats in the National Assembly, bill to also include 10% affirmative action in favor of women in ministerial appointments. So all of these bills were thrown out in the last assembly. They call them gender bills, as it is called. But what exactly is going on now? As a background, the highest political office a woman has ever attained in Nigeria is the Speaker of the House. That's Patricia Ete. We've seen people like Sarah Jibrin trying to be president and going to primaries, and sometimes she's the one voting for herself. So what exactly is going on with women representation as far as politics is concerned is the first leg of our conversation. We'll be joined in the program by a member representing the Kotakbene Federal Constituency in the House of Representatives, Mr. Patrick Umar. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Umar, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much, my brother.
All right, Mr. Omo, I'm almost tempted to ask. I read through some of the bills that were rejected in the Constitution Amendment in the last assembly, were literally thrown out. I'm tempted to ask, is it that men hate women? What is this really all about? Maybe you can help us explain before we come to the current one.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for having me in your program. I wasn't part of the 9th Assembly, but I'm part of the 10th House of Representatives. And I know for a fact that some of these bills that were thrown out, some have been represented in the House for consideration. And incidentally, I chair the House of Reps Committee on Legislative Agenda, and the core priority area of our agenda is inclusion, open parliament and inclusion, which particularly relates to gender issues and all of that. Now, yesterday was a wonderful day. We had a bill that was presented on the floor of the House seeking to alter the provisions of Section 48 and 49 of our Constitution to allow special seats for women in Parliament. And for me, my take on all of this is that this is not where the problem lies. I feel simply that the more we accentuate the issue of maybe providing special seats for women in the National Assembly, the more we reduce competitiveness on the part of women. It is, for me, derogatory to provide special seats for women. I feel we should allow them compete favorably as it is. As a law teacher, I recall when I had female students and male students in the same class, and the female students beating even the males. And so I feel we should rather advance for equal opportunities for all genders, because it sounds undemocratic to assign special seats to a particular sex or class. I just feel it should be a general point. We should allow women enjoy the same level of participation as men. If you go to polling units, for instance, in Nigeria, you find more women in polling units. And the mobilization can be thick, coming from the background of women. But then if you allow it that you have special seats for them, you reduce the excitement for competitiveness. It is even derogatory to allow that to happen. So I feel that, yes, it's clear through second reading. We should actually also allow Nigerians to air their opinions when we have the public hearing of the bill. That's why we allowed it as a House. But I feel from a personal point of view that to accentuate this issue of special seats for women is actually derogatory to women.
All right, Honorable Moore.
But rather we should allow them participate actively in politics. And,
all right,
and
so are you saying you don't?
A level playing ground for all sexes.
So for you,
in
this
fact,
bill should be thrown out.
It is better.
Okay.
It is better to incentivize opportunities for women in terms of mobilization and all of that by political parties. It shouldn't be taken to the height of altering the Constitution.
All right, Nobuma, if I may button, if you can hear me. So a straight question in this one. So you will, if you have your way, this bill should be thrown out. Is that what you're saying?
Of course, I have my way, and the way that I have is I'd rather project these on appointive positions for women, like maybe the Federal Executive Council. We are trying to reduce the cost of governance. So providing additional seats in Parliament for a special class is, apart from being anti-democratic, it is also going to heighten the cost of governance. I don't think that's the problem we have in our country today. We just have the problem of curbing poverty, hunger, unemployment, and all much more serious issues than providing seats for women.
All right, so that people understand what they mean by this issue of improving women representation through the introduction of special seats. What do they mean by special seats here? Is it that new constituencies will be created, and those will be exclusive for women, or among the constituencies we have as federal constituencies and the Senate, certain constituencies within the already existing ones should be given to women, just like we have, I think, in the PDP, where they have ad hoc delegates. The law in that says that 2 will be men and 1 woman in that mix. At least that's the representation, at least 1 woman among the 3 ad hoc delegates. So is that a position creating new ones or reserving something for women in the already existing one? What is it?
No, from the lead debate or the sponsors of the bill, the position is that they want the creation of special seats per state across the federation, including the FCT, and also creating special senatorial seats for women in the Senate. Additionally, having 76 additional seats to 360, and also in the Senate, that's adding up with 109 that's already existing in the Senate. That's what the sponsors of the bill are propagating, which is why I'm saying we don't need to create more seats, more special seats for a particular class. Rather, we should advocate for equality. We should advocate for gender equality.
Okay. Just before I bring in my next guest on this one, how many members are there, women, in the House of Representatives? I know the Senate has 4. How many do we have in the House of Reps?
Well, I can't get the exact number right here, but I think
it's less than 20.
About 6 or so.
I know it's less than 20.
Or more.
Okay. All right. We're also being joined on the program by former country director of Action Aid Nigeria and rights activist, Ms. NLB. She joins us via Zoom. Madam Obi, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
All right, so they say brevity is the soul of wit, according to Shakespeare. So we'll hit this as quickly as possible. The Honorable has said that his position is clear that because of the cost of governance and all of that, there is no point creating additional seats. In his understanding, what the proponents of the bill are saying, for the Senate, let more seats be created. For the House of Reps, let more seats be created. And those seats should be exclusively reserved for women. Do you agree with that position?
I want to say a big thank you, first of all, for putting this on Politics Today, and also to say my gratitude also to the House of Representatives, to the Speaker, because for the first time this year, for the first time in a very long time, and the International Women's Day was celebrated by the Speaker himself, and also the Senate was involved, on March 8th. And we talked about the bills, and we were promised that the bills were going to be represented, and I can see the signs. So I want to say a huge thank you for the nearly 100 members of the House of Representatives that have, put this bill forward, not even waiting for us to agitate like we did, a very massive protest 2 years ago, asking for the 5 gender bills. We have come down, in discussions with them as well to say, okay, let's just come together instead of the 5 bills, presenting 1 bill. And I'm happy that, or excited that the honorable member mentioned, his own excitement about the fact that they are very, very sensitive towards gender inclusion. We should talk about, we are not talking of affirmative action, because what this bill is about affirmative action. And this is a moment in time, I can tell you that, for many members to get up to start, putting this bill through the way they have gone. I want to commend them, and I hope that they walk through. In the original bill, when we presented the 5 bills, one of it was a special seat. And that special seat was even 111. It was 111. And that is that, the 36 states were supposed to have additional, every senatorial zone, will have 1 additional. But now we have come down, the way they have put the bill is 37 seats, in terms of, for the whole of the country. In each state, you have 1 bill, 1 seat where women only will contest for. In other climes, that's what they have done. They have insertion in terms of their constitution to ensure that women representation is there. What we're having in the country, we just need to remind ourselves that in 14 houses of assembly, there is not a single woman in the houses of assembly. Some you have just 1 or 2 or 3, and so on. And so issues of women are being discussed without women. How do you know what it is to be a woman? And then we are having committees women committees being chaired by men, membership is by men, decision is by men. How do we move forward when you have committees, a segment of your population not being there? And when we talk about this is about affirmative action. The Federal Character Commission was created in order to maintain a kind of balance in the diversity of those who are going to represent, those who the decision makers, those who are, the civil servants in the country, to ensure that that is done. But when it comes to gender representation, I think, gone are the days when we did not have many educated women. Now, we have even retired judges, retired professors, and so on. So it's important for us to look at what is on ground. So I think I'm excited that, okay, let me...
All right, if I may, I understand I have barely 3 minutes to wrap up this conversation. Let me see if I can drag it to 4, maybe. Just if you can give me in 1 minute on this particular one on women not showing up enough, even to get women to come on the programs, talk about this and can be an issue. What should women do to show up at least before we begin to talk about other structural issues that militate against them? Just in 30 seconds, madam.
I think we are being blamed before we even start. I was called for this program not too long ago, and I showed up. And so many women are ready to show up. We need more training in terms of media, preparation and capacity building for women. That's true, but not to say that they won't show up. I think there is a lot of movement around that we can record women to come into in terms of coming on board. And I'm happy that the House is starting this now. We don't need to block the road before they hear our voices. But we will block if we have to. We will shut down again the National Assembly if they are not listening. But now that they are talking and they are even taking it further, this is really wonderful, and we commend them. We will stand with them and see how we need to, where we move the sessions forward.
Madam, I must appreciate you for coming at short notice. The reason I said that, because before we reached out, there were a couple of other calls that were not coming through. That's why. Anyway, let's get back to the Honorable. Honorable, on this particular one, I know your position on this, but sometimes it looks like a bit of tokenism in terms of, she's mentioned that sometimes even men represent women in certain capacity. So in your view, if you were to repurpose this bill, besides creating new seats, do you think that it should be dedicating seats already existing for women so that we have representation? I think it's abysmal in terms of numerics and number to have just 4 women as senators out of 104. I don't think it's fair, don't you?
I actually think it is an issue of political mobilization, and it shouldn't be an issue for constitutional alteration. It's not an issue to address for constitutional alteration. Instead, it is to reorient women to participate actively in politics. There's no law in Nigeria today that stops any woman from attaining the highest political office in Nigeria. So I feel it is an issue or a question of political mobilization, reorientation of women, and more robust engagement with the women's societies. It shouldn't be an issue for constitutional alteration, as the case may be. That's my position, sir.
All right, Honorable, I wish we had a lot more time to talk about, because the reason I use the word tokenism is because there are issues of society, patriarchal issue, financial issue. There are layers of issues that women have to overcome. It's not an easy, I'm a he for she. Don't blame me for saying the things I say. We would like to see even a woman, a female president.
I'm a he for she too. I don't want to be misunderstood.
So let's support the women. I must thank you, Patrick Umar, member representing Kodekpene, Esenu Federal Constituency. I'm Madam N.O.B., former country director, Action Aid Nigeria, and rights activist as well. Madam, thank you so much for always coming through at short notice. I appreciate both of you.
Thank you very much.
I'll go on a quick break now. When we come back, it will be time for us to talk about this very thorny issue of fuel scarcity. What exactly is going on? Why is this so much of a recurrent decimal, even with the blessings we have as a country in terms of reserves? We'll talk about it with the expert. Join us again. Welcome back. It's now time to talk about the issue of fuel scarcity. And we've been joined in the program from Abuja City, Mr. Alabade Soumi. He's an energy expert. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Maybe you give us a synopsized version of what this round of scarcity is really all about, because we're hearing different things, from the issue of the mother vessel to daughter vessel. inability to bring in the commodity in terms of logistics and weather, and then the unofficial issue of whether there is a worry on the independent marketers or marketers about the coming upstream of Dangote refinery, Dangote fuel that may crash prices at the end of the day. So there are all kinds of stories. Maybe you give us a synopsized version of what exactly is going on that we have to experience this yet again.
Okay, so because I'm not at the port and you are not at the port, we can only rely on the official information from those who are managing the supply chain, what they tell us. So what the NNPC has said in a news release is that there was a thunderstorm which is affecting the ability to transfer the finished product from the mother vessel to the daughter vessel. In simple terms, there is a hitch in the supply chain. That is what they say. So, and if the independent marketers don't get the product, there's nothing for them to transport to the last mile. In other words, so if there's nothing at the depot, if there's insufficiency at the depot, they cannot get it to the last mile. So that is officially what it is. But the truth be told is that we owe it to ourselves as a nation and as people who are forward thinking that when there are issues within the supply chain, there is of necessity needs for redundancy. And what does redundancy mean? It just means options that are not necessarily used. So there is a reason why your car has an extra tire. It is not because when you are moving out on the road, you expect to have a flat tire. It is because peradventure there's a flat tire, the journey does not have to cease. So all the areas, all the bottlenecks that are within the supply chain, be it mother vessel or daughter vessel part, be it at the depot, be it transportation, there has to be some kind of redundancy for it so that these things can cease to be the issue. And when we do that, we will just be like other people that are forward thinking and who can solve our problems.
One would wonder that with the level of reserve that we have in terms of billions of barrels of oil and maybe trillions of cubic feet of gas and all of that, how come we're still talking about this kind of scenario in 2024? For a layman, that is his understanding. I have this thing in abundance, and although our refineries are not working, we shouldn't be hearing all of this.
Okay, so there's this, I think, movie that was in the 90s. It was like I said, water everywhere, but none to drink. So you can be surrounded by an ocean and not have drinking water, primarily because the water from the ocean needs to be desalinated, then processed for it to be drinkable. So the crude oil that you have in the ground is a potential. It is not the finished product. It needs to be extracted. So that's where the upstream activities goes in. It needs to be processed midstream. It needs to now be transported to you. Now, if for any reason those things don't come to place, you don't have fuel. So there is an understanding, and this thing is very important for Nigerians because there's always this part, whether it's in the power sector, whether it's in the oil and gas sector, is that I just want power. No, ignorance does not solve problems. Demand based on ignorance. So there are certain fundamentals that we need to know so that we can put the appropriate amount of critical mass of pressure on the right places and so that those things can deliver. And so for that purpose, people need to understand that for a long time, our refineries have not been working. The advent of Dangote has brought in a change in perspectives. There is also pressure on the current the GCU of the NNPC for the local refineries to work. But on the basis of the combination of everything, we are expecting a change. But up until when it starts to function, when it starts to be integrated into the supply chain for final delivery, we're still going to be importing. So it is that final phase of importing that had an issue. And so it's important to know that so that we can always put the appropriate amount of pressure on the right place rather than just throw everything in the air and say we want a solution.
So does, for instance, the NNPC have like a reservoir somewhere where maybe in case anything happens at sea, just like we're seeing the thunder strike or thunderstorm or whatever it is called, we're not going to be stuck in this situation at this particular point? You are the expert, so I'm asking a layman's question.
So NNPC of their own have said that they have 30 days worth of reserves. So the question is, have we exhausted it? when did we start using the 30 days, because I don't think that we have had 30 days of storms. But in addition to that, I was checking the meteorological report, and I think they said that throughout next week, like 5 days, there's going to be thunderstorms. So does that mean we're going to cripple the downstream operations? So those are questions that need to be asked. So, but in terms of the information that is available, what has been said is that we have 30 days of reserves. So I believe that that is part of what is being used, which is why the nation itself has not been grounded. Yes, there will be itches in a few places, but we also have to give to the credit that if you queue for a while, you still will get fuel and certain things will happen. So basically, there is a hitch in the supply chain process, but there seems to be some things available.
And so I know this is a bit unofficial, but in business, there's something they call, I think, the first mover, which is the man who came into the market first, and then the market mover who comes in later to upset the entire system, maybe to break through by a certain pricing policy. We saw that with Dangote and diesel. And some people are alluding to the fact that part of what is going on is the fact that because of the inability of the NNPCL to give marketers refined product to sell, and they have to go to depots to buy, at higher prices. If Dangote has said by this month he's going to roll out the petrol from his refinery, and that fear over whether or not his prices may affect the ability to sell the ones they have at higher prices. I just wanted you to speak to all of that speculation.
Okay, so this now moves into the politics of the whole thing. And I say politics because, sincerely, there's a significant amount of politics in within it. I do not think that the whole industry is going to be disrupted in the circumstances and in the way that is being narrated by Dangote, by Dangote Refinery. Yes, you talked about first mover advantage, which is the advantage that comes with the person that enters the market first. But you also talk about disruptive technologies, disruptive systems, disruptive companies, like you have in IT and all that. The energy industry is not really like the IT or the ICT sector. There are laws within thermodynamics that are as old as Napoleon. There are certain things that are not going to change overnight. Yes, there is always a positive effect to additional competition, but we need to also understand that we have been importing diesel for decades, and when there is going to be a disruption, in the sense that this disruption needs to be something that has to be proven to be consistent for a while. In other words, sustainable. The key word there is sustainable. So when there is a perspective by the refinery, Dangote Refinery in this case, it is always nice to also hear from the other side so that there's a balance. Because really, nobody analyzes his own situation and comes faulty out of it. And that is not taking anything away from the ingenuity, the consistency, the energy, and the courage that Dangote has exhibited for him to come up with the refinery, which to all intents and purposes, is the biggest refinery in the world. But he's still going to meet with veterans in the industry, people who have done 25 years, some people who are even third generation in the industry. So it's not going to be like cement, it's not going to be like spaghetti. It's going to really meet some quality competition in the industry.
All right, that argument over competition and monopoly is also an argument around him as well, but I'm not going to delve into that. It's for another day. But what I want to ask is how much of forward sales agreement affects our own part of this whole ecosystem? Because the Dangote had raised alarm that he's not getting crude. And people are saying, well, the federal government has a responsibility to provide you that crude because of the JV agreement. He had to go and buy WTI, even if it's cheaper, the logistics involved and all of that. So I want you to speak of how much is impacting the entire ecosystem in terms of our production ability, because we also understand that the government is also falling short in terms of funding for the production process itself, which affects the output.
Also, government has always been falling short, in the last probably 20 years. So that's probably no news. When you want to when you look at Nigeria as at today, we do about 1.25 million barrels per day. When you check the JV agreements or the production sharing quota, once the IOCs take their part, maybe we'll probably end with like half of that, like $750,000 per day. You will recall that the previous government had made forward sales on the crude oil, which means that some of the loans that was taken, particularly even the loans that was used for the elections, were based on the crude that we are yet to produce. So there's a significant amount of that goes into servicing those debts. There has also been one or two loans by this government, I think the one with IMF, which takes about 18% of our crude sales. So at the end of the day, you come up with about 200,000 barrels, which is what we use for our activities today. It is from there that our forex earnings come from, and it is part of the reason why we are not able to have enough forex for the naira. It should be understood that when you have a refinery like the capacity, like the one that Dangote has, it is also his own responsibility to ensure that his supply chain is sustained. So in other words, he has to look at options. If for any reason the NNPC that was relying on failed, then where is he going to get his supply from? And that is why he has to go abroad. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, that anyone can really do apart from breaking contracts to satisfy him. We have significantly low amount of crude, which is, by the way, responsible for 75% of our forex. And that cannot just be diverted to one person. That is the reality on the ground. People may not say it because of the implications, but it is the fact that for them to change that, people are likely to take Nigeria to court. There will be issues of credibility in the international market because some of all those contracts, they are 20-year-old contracts, they are 30-year-old contracts, they are contracts of 15 years, which we have been doing and we must do for us to have credibility in the market. So one of the things as an option way forward for the Dangote refinery is for him to also drill his own field. In other words, he should, because of its strategic importance, be given an oil field. That oil field he should drill and then pump the crude for himself.
Wow, that's a big one. So, I don't know. So you're saying literally that Dangote should literally swim with the sharks. So welcome to competition. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's the reality. You know, sometimes truth is not easy, but truth is what it is. I mean, I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. that said that you can squash the truth on the floor and stamp on it, but surely it will rise up again. The fact of the matter is that as at today, Nigeria cannot afford to give him the amount of crude that he wants. It is not about activism. It is about basic, fundamental economics and operational reality.
Okay, maybe with this information for those, everyone involved, and especially for Nigeria, for a proper frame of reference, maybe we'll just have to brace up for what we're facing at the end of the day, because this is more like energy security optimism has to be cautious, given the scenario you just painted. I must thank you, Mr. Alabode Showumi, energy expert, for bringing perspective to this conversation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here.
All right, we'll now switch gears. I told you a couple of issues we have to deal with today, and one of which is the issue of that livestock development ministry that the president pronounced yesterday. We had a conversation with policy experts yesterday, but today I want to talk to the people in the academia who have understanding of how this thing play out as well. Professor Olaniyi Babayemi, Professor of Animal Sciences, University of Ibadan, joins us via Zoom. Prof, thank you so much for coming on the program and for your patience.
And thank you very much. It's a pleasure having me.
Okay, Prof, as an academic and somebody who has done a lot of work in this direction, the first natural question I will ask you is your first reaction to this announcement by the president of just over 24 hours ago, and whether or not the livestock ministry, livestock subsector of the agricultural sector, is big enough to be elevated to the status of a ministry.
Thank you very much. I think the announcement did not come to us as a surprise. It's long expected. Because when you talk of agriculture, it is not only crop that we can call agriculture. Agriculture consists of crop and animal science or livestock production. And if you take crop science or crop production as an example, we can say that it's already developed. It developed indeed. There are examples that we can show that crop is already developed, because if you look at some of the institutes that we have in Nigeria, we have CRIN, that is a Cocoa Research Institute of Nigeria, that takes care of cocoa, cashew, coffee, and other crops like that. You have a NIHOT. NIHOT is in charge of oil palm. There is NIHOT, NIFOR is in charge of oil palm. NIHOT, that is Nigerian Institute for Horticulture and Research. And then there is FRIN, Forest Research Institute of Nigeria. There is also what we call RIN, R-R-I-N, that is Rubber Research Institute of Nigeria in Benin. And then, of course, the father of them all is IITA. IITA is basically in charge of arable crops, particularly cassava, soybean, and cowpea. And up north, there is this institute that we call the ICCRAT, International Institute of Crop Research for dry land and the tropics. You will see that all these are in existence for crop production. But for livestock production, there is none like that, except the one we have in NAPRI. That is the National Animal Production Research Institute. That is the only institute that livestock can point to in Nigeria. And of course, you will see that crops are well developed because you have all these institutes, research institutes that are taking care of them. But for livestock production, the only institute we have is NAPRI. And that is why I said that it's not coming to us as a surprise, because it's an opportunity to develop livestock. The name of the ministry is Livestock Development. Development means that there is something maybe underdeveloped, but there is a need to develop it. And that is why it is being named Livestock Development. And that development is going to do a lot. Other people quote the president that the ministry is established in order to settle the rift or the rancor or the problem, the challenges between crop farmers and the herders. No, it goes beyond that. Although on the long run, he's going to settle that, but that is not the main issue. There are other issues, as I have said, that particular ministry will settle. And among them is what I've told you, that there will be need to develop livestock. And in developing that, for example, the NAPRI that I mentioned is only NAPRI that takes care of poultry, takes care of dairy, takes care of small ruminants, and all kinds of livestock. Livestock cannot develop in that sense.
All right, Prof. When you look at the word livestock in that sense, there are a few highlights to the layman, which is why we brought you the academic to help us dig deeper and have a better understanding so that we can have a better frame of reference to this particular issue. There are a few highlights. If, as much as time will allow us, let's unpack them one after the other. You've mentioned one, which is the resolution, this protracted resolution that we're looking for when it comes to header farmer crisis. How do you see this resolving that, whether in the short term or in the long run?
Well, in the short term, well, let me take that of a long run. Rome is not built in a day. Development has to be gradual. For example, how can this ministry solve or resolve the rancor between the herders and the crop farmers. For example, in some developed countries, they have gone beyond extensive system. There are 3 systems of livestock production. We have extensive system, semi-intensive system, and intensive system. Presently in Nigeria, we are still practicing extensive system. But with this livestock development as a ministry, we go beyond extensive system. Because if you want intensive system, a system whereby you want the animals to be confined to a particular place, maybe to your home, to your garden, or to your farm, there must be provision for food. For example, cattle. An average cattle will consume about 42 kilograms of grass per day. You can imagine where such 42 kilograms will be obtained. So for us to actually cage or restrict movement of animals, there must be provision for food. So what will happen is that by the time the ministry starts, number one, there will be session for production of food, that is animal nutrition. There will be a session for breeding of animals. Let me tell you, we don't have high quality animals in Nigeria. For example, in Botswana, an animal can just, a farmer can just keep about 10 animals. That 10 animals in Botswana is equivalent to about 50 animals in Nigeria in terms of size. And then when you have such high-fed animals, there is no reasonable farmer, reasonable livestock owner that will begin to drive such animals from one location to another. Definitely, the farmer will restrict the animal to where they are supposed to be with good feed, good diet for the animals. So, on the long run, when our livestock are improved, maybe through introduction, through selection, and through breeding, we have high-quality animals that nobody will like to take to the bush, but to be confined in a place for rearing and for good production.
All right, Prof, I know you've mentioned the issue of ranching, which also brings the argument that I put up yesterday, that some people have put up as well, when you read the thoughts of a lot of people about federal government getting involved in interventions like this, given the paucity of funds that we have, where we're indebted. And people are talking about overbloating the system that is already overbloated, or extensively overbloating it, given the fact that there's a new ministry. So how are we going to separate the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security from the Ministry of Livestock Development?
Well, whether Ministry of Food Security, Ministry of Livestock Development is towards a particular aim. And the aim is to put food on the table that average Nigerian can afford. So that is the aim. Now, you can actually use one stone to kill 2 birds. And the bird that we are killing is the hunger, is to put food on the table. So the Ministry of Food Security and the Ministry of Livestock, they have different, it's like unity in diversity. They have their role to play. We have our own role to play, but to go and meet somewhere to put food on the table. Livestock is livestock. Crop is crop. They have different orientation, different production, different system, and a different technology that can be applied on them. Somebody who is the minister of a crop, who is the minister of agriculture, maybe by the virtue of being involved in production of crops, now want to oversee that of livestock. The question is, I'm very sorry, with all sense of humility, what does he know about livestock, about poultry, about cattle, about swine, about pig, about rabbit, about grass cutter, about snail, and all that, about sheep and goats? So if you will have these different ministries, they will have a focus. They will have a goal that they will achieve at the end of the day. And that is why I feel that it's a welcome development that we have livestock development as a ministry in Nigeria.
All right, Prof, in winding down, I remember former President Olusegun Obasanjo saying that Africa must stop looking at agriculture generally as more like a charity case for meeting the needs of the poor. It should be looked at as a business. So let's elevate the conversation to the issue of this livestock business. What, in terms of revenue, should we be expecting, given this attention that is going to be given to that particular subsector in the ecosystem?
That's a very good question. As I said, if you look at our animals, honestly speaking, do we have dairy cattle in Nigeria? No. In other clients, that is a very big source of income for them. Our dairy animal in Nigeria is like a river without water. It's like a deep well without water. That is what we can call our dairy animal in Nigeria. Our animals in Nigeria, the highest they can produce is about 3 liters a day. Whereas in other places, even in some African countries, some of them produce about 20 liters, 25 liters, even 30 liters of milk per day. You can imagine if you have about 2,000, 3,000, even about 5,000 dairy animals in Nigeria, what a big income, what a big economy will it be for Nigeria? And that is just from aspect of dairy only. Beef animal, poultry, pig, micro livestock, and all that, when they are engaged, and they are engaged in a proper way, in a good way, in a modern way of practicing livestock production, I'm telling you, there will be a great income for the country, revenue for individuals and revenue for the country.
Prof, we must thank you. This conversation, there's an intersection between science and politics and all whatnot. So we brought you to talk about exclusively around the sciences of this. We must thank you, Professor Lani Babayemi, the Professor of Animal Sciences, University of Ibadan. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that's it on this edition of the program. Thank you so much for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Ozama. Good night.